Melbourne, Florida. We've got the beautiful weather, the beaches, the rivers, the sun, the surf, the cruise industry, the space program, abundant parks, nature trails, excellent schools, a booming economy, and much, much more. There is no other place like it in the world. Life here is great, but it is not perfect. In this video, I'm going to go over the top pros and cons of what it's like to live here in Melbourne, Florida. So if you're considering a move here to the Melbourne, Florida area or anywhere in Florida, or you just want to know the good and bad about Melbourne, Florida, you're going to want to stay tuned. Let's do it. Okay, so let's talk about the top pros and cons of living in Melbourne, Florida in 2024. Now, for me, whenever I talk about pros and cons, the top pro and con for Melbourne, Florida, and for Florida is the weather. Now, the weather will, of course, vary depending on which part of the state you're in. Melbourne being in the east central coast of the state, we see average temperatures in the summer in the low 90s, and in the winter, they get down into the low 70s. So you're going to get about 7 to 8 months where the average temperature, the average high temperature is above 80 here in Melbourne, Florida. Now again, I've lived here in the Melbourne, Florida area for 41 years. I've seen snow or sleet only twice here since I've lived here. You'll get snow or sleet more in the Panhandle, sometimes up to a half a dozen times in the year, and of course, hardly ever down in South Florida. So most people will rate our weather here in the Melbourne, Florida area as just simply gorgeous, and I do as well. But there are some negatives. There are some, of course, cons when it comes to the weather here in Melbourne, Florida. The number one con, of course, are hurricanes. Now, I'm an ex-meteorologist. I worked in the Air Force here at Patrick Air Force Base, and I can tell you that we get threatened every year with hurricanes that sometimes come really close, sometimes come fairly close. But the last hurricane actually to cross paths through the county here, Brevard County, which is the county here in Melbourne, Florida, actually was 1979. That was Hurricane David. And actually, that was only a Category 1 hurricane. So we've been fortunate here in the Melbourne area where we haven't had any direct hits. Of course, there's been other areas that have. Fort Myers, of course, got hit by Hurricane Ian back in 2022, and others throughout the years, of course. Now, Florida is the number one state when it comes to landfalls here in the U.S., where 41% of the landfalling hurricanes actually do hit Florida. So that is always a threat here in the summer times when it comes to the weather here in the Melbourne, Florida area. But the one good thing about hurricanes, I will say, is you generally have time to prepare for them. So they're not a sudden thing like an earthquake or tornado, although tornadoes can spawn from hurricanes, of course. But hurricanes will always give you a warning, so you get your panels up, your hurricane shutters, you have time to evacuate generally. So yes, there are some people that don't want to live in Florida because they are vastly afraid of hurricanes, and we're always concerned. We always have to have our planning. But hurricanes, of course, are the number one negative or the number one con when it comes to weather here in Florida. Now, one other con I will say about weather here in Florida is that you won't get much of a seasonal variation. So you get summer, 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 and a little bit of fall, maybe a little bit of winter, but there's just not much of a winter here. The winters actually are very nice. The winters are generally in the highs in the 70s and lows in the 50s, just really, really nice. Get a little bit of that California low humidity weather, but you just don't get the change of seasons that you will up north. I being from Chicagoland area, you just don't get that. I miss that a little bit. So that's the other little thing, negative, I would say, about the weather here in Melbourne, Florida. But all in all, the weather is gorgeous here in the Melbourne, Florida area. That's why many people come here. That's why I think you'll like it too. My name is David Jelinek. I'm a local real estate agent here in the Melbourne, Florida area, which is also known as the Space Coast. Please know that I make videos that are all about the Melbourne, Florida area, what it's like to live here, what it's like to work here, what it's like to play here, the food, the beaches, the entertainment, the real estate, and much, much more. I've lived in this area for over 40 years. I've been a realtor for more than 36 years, so I know this area very, very well. If you're looking for an experienced agent to help you with your move here to the Melbourne, Florida area, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, and I'll be happy to set up a private call with you to discuss my services and to help make your move here to the Melbourne, Florida area a very easy one and a very fun one. Okay, so the number 2 pro for living here in Melbourne, Florida for 2024 is the fact that there's so much to do here in the Melbourne, Florida area, including new shopping and new restaurants. So whether you are young or whether you are old or anywhere in between, there is so much for you to do here in the Melbourne, Florida area. And because of the great weather, you can do most of these things year round. And those things start with the 72 miles of beautiful beachfront here in the Melbourne, Florida area. And with the 72 miles of beautiful beaches, there are some very nice parks and access points to get to the beach with. We love going down to Paradise Beach or Pelican Beach Park there to go for a walk, lay on the beach and get some sun and surf, swim, of course. You can fish, you can boogie board, play sand volleyball, and much, much more. Many of the parks have restroom facilities and outdoor showers. Some of them are even pet friendly, like Canova Beach Park, where there's a special dog area for your special friend. But overall, there are over 150 parks in the metro Melbourne area where you can golf, tennis, pickleball, baseball, softball, football, surfing, boating, jet skiing, swimming, hiking. Wickham Park is the largest with almost 400 plus acres where you can do so much. It contains recreational facilities and amenities, including campgrounds, a disc golf course, equestrian facilities, an archery range, an off-leash dog park, nature trails, exercise trails, and so much more. Pavilions for picnics, so much to enjoy there at Wickham Park. There are other numerous walking trails and parks like the Viera Wetlands and the Erman Nixon Park, where you can leisurely stroll through some native Florida landscape and see some of nature's most beautiful creatures. Melbourne is fortunate to have the Brevard Zoo, where you can go and feed the animals, ride the train, and cool off in their paws on water play area for the kids. They have a lush open habitats area there that are home to over 900 animals from around the world. They have giraffe feeding, animal encounters, bird feeding, lions, cheetahs, rhinos, black bears, and much, much more. They have the treetop trek lining, zip lining, which is an activity that I enjoy, kayak tours, and much, much more. In addition to all of these, the Melbourne area has the Kennedy Space Center, which I rate as the #1 thing to do here in the Melbourne, Florida area. There's also Port Canaveral, which is home to many different cruise lines and cruise ships where you can go out and set sail here directly from the Melbourne, Florida area. And that doesn't mention all the things that are available within an hour or two drive of Melbourne. So Melbourne's only an hour's drive or so away from Orlando. So you have all the features of Disney in Orlando and all the other theme parks that are available within an hour's drive. You can get to Tampa in 2 hours, Busch Gardens and other things that are in Tampa. Daytona's only an hour drive away. You have Miami, which is only about 3 hours away. And then you have the Key West, which is a great, unique place to go, is only a little over 5 hours drive away from Melbourne here. So there's just so much to do here in the Melbourne, Florida area, either locally right here in Melbourne or throughout the state, which is just an hour or two or a few hours drive away. There's so much to do here in Melbourne, Florida. My name is David Jelinek. I'm a local real estate agent here in the Melbourne, Florida area, which is also known as the Space Coast. I've lived in this area for 41 years. I've been a realtor for 37 years. If you're looking for an experienced agent to help you with your move here to the Melbourne, Florida area, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. I'll be happy to set up a private call with you to determine what your wants and needs are and to help make your move here to the Melbourne, Florida area a very easy one and a very fun one. Okay, so my #2 con for 2024 here in Melbourne, Florida is the increased traffic. So population is increasing and so is the traffic. Now it's clear that the population of Florida has been steadily increasing since 1950 and especially over the past 15 to 20 years. With the population increases nearing 2% in Florida and in the Melbourne area over the past few years, it's no surprise that traffic increases and possible traffic congestion could soon follow. Now, as someone that has lived in the Melbourne area for the past 40 years, you would naturally think that someone like myself would readily complain that the traffic has gotten so much worse here over the years. And it has gotten heavier, it has gotten more busy, there's no doubt about it, but it's still not that bad. So if I see a backup of more than 10 or 15 minutes for some generic reason, that's a rare event. So yes, we do have backups when there's accidents or road work or a special event, but over the normal course of business, in my experiences, it's very uncommon to see a backup of more than 10 to 15 minutes. And if that's the limit of the backups you get, the traffic congestion just isn't that bad. But everything is relative. So if you're coming from a more rural town and you come to this area here, yes, you're going to think it's much more busy, much more congested. If you're coming from a bigger city like Chicago or Miami or even Orlando, then this is going to seem like a calm, suburban type of feel when it comes to traffic. So everything is relative. You have to make that decision for yourself. Again, the population is increasing, the traffic is increasing, but in my opinion, it is still not that bad. So let me know in the comments below how you feel about this. I'm curious to know. Okay, so on to my number 3 pro for living here in Melbourne, Florida, and that's the excellent economy here in the Melbourne, Florida area. So business and the economy is booming here in Melbourne, Florida. So first of all, Florida is a very tax-friendly state. So the personal income tax here in Melbourne and all of Florida is 0, where the national average is about 4.6%. The sales tax rate here in Melbourne, Florida is 7.0%. The national average is 7.3%. The unemployment rate here in Melbourne, Florida is at about 4.7%, where the national average is about 6%. And finally, the cost of living here in the Melbourne, Florida area sits at about 95.6%. So that's 4.4% lower than the national average. Now, Melbourne has seen job growth increase about 2% over the last several years, and future job growth sits at about 41% over the next 10 years compared to the national average of about 33%. So major employment industries for this area include aerospace, engineering, electronics, manufacturing, communications, and emerging technologies. Also, healthcare, educational services, hospitality, retail, and housing are also very strong players when it comes to employment here in the Melbourne, Florida area. And of course, the retirement community. So Melbourne, Florida is a very popular destination for the 55+ crowd, and it offers many different popular choices when it comes to 55+ communities and amenities. New businesses and new restaurants are flocking to the Melbourne, Florida area, and newcomers include Whole Foods, Ford's Garage, the Venezia Wine Veranda, several new hotels, retail facilities, medical complexes, hospitals, and much, much more. So whether you're looking to move your family here to Melbourne, Florida to start a new job or to just retire, Melbourne, Florida has so much to offer and can be a great destination for you. Okay, so my number 3 con for living in Melbourne, Florida is the high price of insurance, and that includes both car and home insurance. Now, this, of course, is a Florida problem, not necessarily just a Melbourne, Florida problem, but it is important to mention here. A recent national report showed that Floridians are now paying the second highest auto insurance premiums in the country. The report stated that on average, Floridians are paying about $3,500 a year for auto insurance, and only New York has higher insurance premiums for cars. Now, the nationwide average is about $2,600 a year. Now, it is true that auto insurance premiums are basically going up across the country, but Florida did see about a 24% increase over the last year. Now, of course, your premium will depend on the kind of car that you drive and whether you have a good or bad driving record, or if your credit rating is good or bad. Those will all be indicators as to what will drive your insurance premium. So you might be asking, well, why are Florida's insurance rates higher than others? Well, a lot of it has to do with the weather, of course. You can potentially get not only home damage when you have hurricanes and storms, but you can have car damage. It also has to do with litigation. So litigation is a problem here in Florida, whether you have young drivers or old drivers. There's just tends to be a lot of litigation with car and home insurance. And the last feature is inflation. So the entire country is seeing this. So when there's an accident or there's damage to your car, just the cost of parts and labor tends to be much higher than it used to be in the past. Now, for me personally, I think you can do better than the $3,500 a year per vehicle. Now, I have 2 vehicles, and my total insurance for those 2 vehicles is about $2,500 for the year. And I have a good driving record. I don't have overly expensive cars, and I have a good credit rating. So that's helping me. But things like that can also help you if you're looking to lower your insurance rate. And please contact me anytime if you want more money-saving tips when it comes to car insurance. So the second half of the insurance problem in Florida is the homeowners insurance. So Florida has been notorious for a tough market for homeowners insurance due to the state's risk level. The Sunshine State's long coastline and narrow shade mean that much of the state is at risk for hurricane damage, wind damage, and flooding. Sinkholes can also be a danger to Florida homes. So the national average cost for homeowners insurance for a $300,000 dwelling is about $2,600 per year. In Florida, that average is about $3,500 per year, putting Florida in the top 5 of the highest states for homeowners insurance. So which state do you think has the highest insurance rates in the country? Well, that accolade goes to Oklahoma with insurance rates averaging about $5,800 per year. So homeowners in states that tend to have more natural disasters like hurricanes and tornadoes and hailstorms tend to have the highest home insurance rates. But inflation and litigation also are big players when it comes to higher insurance premium. Now, Florida saw their home insurance rates go up about 20% per year over the last couple of years, but that didn't even qualify them to be in the top 10 states. So the home insurance problem is a nationwide problem. It's not just a Florida problem. The home insurance market across the country is constantly evolving, but rest assured, if you buy a property here in Florida, you can get homeowners insurance for it. Those rates might be a little higher than what you're used to, but there are ways to lower the cost of your home insurance, even if you're living on the coast. If you have any questions about this issue, or if you want more tips on how to lower your insurance costs, reach out to me. So these are my pros and cons for living in Melbourne, Florida for 2024. I've lived in this area for over 40 years, so I know this area very, very well. Please comment below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my opinions on this subject. And please hit that like button if you've liked this content. And if you want to hear more about the Melbourne, Florida area, please subscribe to my channel. See you on the next one.